that's why they're standing up here explaining stuff. All live? Fantastic. I went live and the thing went away. I didn't do anything. Why are you touching me? What's wrong with you?
I'm trying to share the camera space.
Come here. No.
That was your idea.
Okay, welcome everybody. I hope you're here for the Laravel Meetup, because that's what you're going to get for the next 30 to 45 minutes. My name is Eric Van Johnson. I'm Showcom on Twitter, if anybody's interested.
I'm Tom Rideout. I'm PFY on IRC and Real Rideout on Twitter.
So some upcoming meetups we have going on. STPHP, which is the PHP user group here in San Diego, and our sister group. Their next meetup will be in North County. I go through this every time, but there's always new people, so I feel like I have to go through it. STPHP, we have a meetup in North County, and then the following month it's in downtown, so it bounces between the two. So this March meetup is in North County, which means April will be downtown. And this one, Thomas is actually doing this one, building a custom framework with Expressive.
Yeah, Expressive is the new Zen micro framework or skeleton framework, and I'll be talking about what a framework is, how to build your own, and why you want to build your own.
You understand who these people are, right? Just saying. Just letting you know.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Our next Laravel meetup will be here again, carry.net in March 23rd. And one of the talks will be validation with Marcus. And anybody else wants to do a talk, feel free to step up. We'll get to some suggestions here in a little bit, but.
And that is, March is going to be a 5-week month, but we are still meeting on the fourth Wednesday of the month.
Yeah, we always meet on the fourth Wednesday. STPHP meets up on the second Wednesday of the month. And like I said, they bounce from downtown to North County. And we're always here at carry.net on the fourth Wednesday of the month. So if you are, I didn't move these around for you, by the way. You want to talk?
So we're always looking for topics. If there's something that you're interested in learning about or presenting, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to read and be willing to learn and ask questions and answer questions. We have a Trello board, which has a list of existing topics. You can vote things up or down, or you can add your own things. And we highly encourage everyone to go check it out and see if there's something you want to learn about or present.
You can view it. It's open to the public. To add something, we need to add you to the board, so just send Thomas or I an email.
Eric?
Send Eric, me, at sdphp.org, or Tom at sdphp.org, an email, and we'll add you to the board so you can add suggestions. I don't remember, can you vote?
You can vote.
If you're anonymous, though?
Yeah.
You can vote anonymous?
Yeah.
Okay. We communicate with you guys through a couple means. Most of you probably are aware of Meetup, so that's typically, that's always where we keep the next meeting going. Oh, I got a question, just out of curiosity. This meetup, we actually rescheduled it because the original one we scheduled, same date, same time, everything, same topic. We had like one person RSVP to that one. And then when I rescheduled it, like everybody RSVP'd. Did nobody see the first one?
If it was for the same date, I don't know.
Yeah, you must be right. There must have been something weird about that post.
You must be right. That's weird.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's so bizarre. All right. So anyways, we're always the fourth Wednesday. So if you don't see a posting on Meetup and the fourth Wednesday is coming up, feel free to ping us and ask us why it's not there. We do have a Slack channel. Again, it's the STPHP Slack channel. If any of you are familiar with Slack, you need to sign up in order to get an account. We have automated that process. If you just go to sign up. If you go to slack.stphp.org, you can sign up right there. You just put in your email address and it'll send you a notification. From there, you just go to stphp.slack.com. You're in there. One of the nice things about the Slack channel is there's a channel in there that's a bridge to the STPHP IRC, which again, you can go on IRC as well. That's always there. It's on Freenode. It's at #STPHP. But we do have the bridge in Slack.
If you're interested in doing things the easier and correct way, we have an IRC channel. We are on freenode.net. It's the hashtag SDPHP channel.
But if you don't want
There
to
are-
miss any of the conversation while you're not actually there, Slack is a better way to go.
There are a
because
lot of
it's everything
people
going.
in the channel idling. If you come into the channel, go ahead and introduce yourself. Just say, hey, I showed up, I'm doing this and this, and want to say hi to everybody. You know, a lot of people won't talk until they have something specific to talk about, but we will all say hi to anyone new coming in. If you have questions, feel free to post them. There's a lot of people there who are work from home and have a lot of time to help out other people. You know, that's all of us here who do these meetups are idle in those channels all the time. So we're there to answer questions and help people out.
The channel is more active during the day, so if you get in there at night, it's actually very common that people won't reply, but during the day it's very active.
Yeah, and again, it's the correct way to communicate with the SDPHP group.
The Slack channel, right? Okay, you can also follow us on Twitter if you like, San Diego Laravel, and we have a website where we will typically post the slides from the previous meetup.
Yeah, and all the slides will be available on the sdlug.com website as well as the sdphp.org website, which was provided to us by Business Soccer.
You want to talk news?
So, as far as news, it's been kind of a slow month for Laravel. The Laravel Gurus site has been relaunched. Laravel Gurus is run by Userspace, which also runs the larajobs.com site. We've got stickers back there for larajobs.com. Laravel Gurus is a currently free place to post your contractor or individual profiles. And it's basically the opposite of Larajobs. If you're looking to provide the service of being a Laravel developer, then Laravel Gurus is the place to go. We spoke about it last month, but Laracon tickets are still available for both the US and EU. On the big news, Homestead adds MariaDB support. MariaDB is the more open source version of the MySQL engine.
Okay, something on Laracon, they're getting free beer on their house and sign up today.
Oh, really?
Did not know that.
That's news. There you go.
Yeah, sign up today, and I guess, I don't know which time zones.
The framework version for Laravel has been bumped to 5.2.21. Not really any big news in there. A lot of middleware adjustment type stuff. That's, I believe, 5 micro versions since the last time we met up. A lot of really good information is freely available on laraver.xyz about what's changing between each of these micro versions. The Laravel Hackathon Starter Pack, which is sort of a framework. It's additional tools for creating applications in Laravel very quickly in a hackathon-style environment. That's been released. And then some general news.
Yeah, it's on GitHub.
Yeah, it's on GitHub somewhere.
If you go to, I think they posted on Laravel News. Go to Laravel News, you'll see an article there.
In non-Laravel news, the Linux Mint distribution site was hacked over the weekend, resulted in a couple thousand downloads, but the biggest issue for the PHP people here is that their forums were using an older version of PHP password hashing, which means that the passwords were basically clear text. There's a lot of liability on their end for passwords that are being sold. The kind of thing that you want to avoid when you're developing your own site. Make sure that your passwords are secure as possible, hashed in the database. You can refer to John's talk about bcrypt from several years ago. And finally, GitHub has added issue and pull request templates so that people can add more information to their issue logs or pull requests to continue improvement on the GitHub experience. This is sort of the start of GitHub trying to improve its feature cycle and add a lot more things that people have been demanding for a long time.
So no official release of Spark yet?
Spark is currently still heavily in development. It's a really big deal.
I don't think it's heavily in development. I think it's, the last I heard, it's basically ready to go. He's working on documentation.
That's not right.
Yeah, we'll
That's
see.
incorrect.
100% wrong. with that one.
Spark recently added
Promise you.
uploading for images, for avatars, and gravatar support, and additional customer satisfaction enhancements.
All right, we'll see who wins this one.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Okay.
That's pretty fair.
What's that? So we have two things here. I was going to have that be its own slide, but that's fine. 50 Laravel tricks in 50 minutes. We're going to start going through these. Not going to do a big presentation on them. They're meant to be pretty quick, so we got a couple queued up for this intro. And then you want to talk about this other one?
Sure, this is a video series on how the Laravel router system was made. It's an advanced level, in-depth topic into internals of the Laravel framework. So if you're interested in seeing how things work behind the scenes, this is a good presentation to watch.
All right. So 50 tricks in 50 minutes. I'm just going to start from beginning to end. The first one they had was automatic model validation. This is pretty good. I think the use case of it is pretty edge, but I can see some benefit to it. If you're familiar with validation in Laravel, this would typically be the way you do it. You'd have a controller, you pass your requests into the controller, you'd do some validation, and you would move on. If it fails the validation, it kicks you out of the controller, everything's fine. With model validation, the process is a little bit more work initially, but within the model itself, what you do is you end up defining your validation. You define the static boot method. This is a save method. This can actually be specific to creating or updating, but we just said saving in general, so it catches everything. It'll go through the validation process here, and if it fails, same thing. The only difference here, and I tested this before I presented. By the way, I ran through the task tutorials he has on the Laravel site now. He's got two, beginner and intermediate, or something. I forget what the two different ones are. This was the more advanced one. Very worth going through. If you're trying to learn Laravel, go through those tutorials. They're very quick. I did the whole thing in like 30 minutes, and I still learned something new with policies. But so the idea here in the task, I thought was a good example, because the idea here is that maybe you're adding tasks in multiple places. I mean, that might not be the best practice, but perhaps you're doing it. You're doing it in a task controller, you're doing it in some other controller. Instead of worrying about making sure validation gets touched everywhere, if by adding validation to the model, you're assured that every time something is done to that model, it's going through this validation. So like I said, a little bit more work to set up. Don't know how much benefit it adds, but you may have a use case where it makes sense.
Would it be possible to roll that into your repository pattern?
I mean, I don't see why not.
Is this probably 5.2?
No.
This is older.
This has actually been around for a while. Yeah. When I was doing some research on it, I was seeing. I believe I saw this represented in Laravel 4. So yeah, it's been around for a while.
I like to use this for defining what I call hard rules and soft rules. A hard rule would be a situation where the database should fundamentally reject something, so a column does not allow for null input. A soft rule would be to say that a user can't name something that's already been named, but an admin can. So I would put my hard rules into the model, saying the model should reject this, but I'd put my soft rules into my controller or my repository, saying the repository should reject this because the repository is aware of the user state.
Okay. The other little trick they did was preventing updates. Again, this goes into your model. And just by adding this static updating function, return false, and you see we have the same static. This could have been updating, but it was saved in here, where we kick into the validation rules. You basically apply that same approach here. You just return false. This means that if you have a model like the task model, you don't want people to be able to update it after they create a task. This would prevent that. You wouldn't have to do any other work there.
Yeah, and this calls upon the event stack. So at any point in the event stack, if you call false, the whole event stack will recurse backwards and fail over.
So just two quick little tricks, and we will continue through those 50 tricks throughout the year. Want to talk resources? If you're interested in more Laravel news, we do have quite a few Laravel resources. All this stuff, including this intro slide, you go to stlug.com. That will take you to this intro slide here. But a couple, really good resources here. Podcasts. I'm a big podcast. I noticed the new Laravel podcast got released today. I didn't get a chance to listen to it, so something fantastic could be happening at this moment, and we're not aware of it. Like Spark was released. Just letting you know.
I checked.
Spark might have been released.
I checked.
Could have happened.
No.
Blogs and news, and some fantastic Twitter handles to follow.
There seems to be a podcast missing here, though.
Which one?
Is there it's oh god, what's it called? What's it called, John? What's it called?
You're not talking about it.
PHP Ugly.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah. That one.
I wasn't aware we were coming out of the closet on that yet. Yes.
I thought you already had.
No. All right. So we're talking about doing a podcast. We may be adding to this list here shortly. We'll see how it goes. This guy irritates me once a month. I don't know how.
That is my
I
job.
put up with him once a week.
Yeah.
We'll see. Want to thank our sponsors. Cirrus here. This is important. First and foremost, Carry.net. That's the facility you're in right now. This is Carry.net. They provide the food, they provide the streaming, all this other fantastic stuff. Laravel Jobs reached out to me last week, said, hey, we'd love to include you in our community section. They sent us some stickers over there. So we want to thank them. Diego Dev, company myself and John own, do a lot of work in the back end website, blah, blah, blah. Beer, Diego Dev, just letting you know. And the author of Writing APIs with Lumen, Paul, reached out to me on Twitter, says, hey, I would love to give away a copy of my book to your group. It's a digital copy. So at the conclusion of our meetup today, we have a little randomizing application that we will drop your name, or we'll drop the meetup code into, and as long as you RSVP, you'll be in to be picked. And if you get picked, you can have a free copy. For everybody who doesn't get the free copy, because we only have one, he gave me another code for, I want to say it was 20% off, but I might be wrong on that. But there is a discount code that we'll provide, and I'll tweet that out as well. And I believe that's it.
There's one last thing. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to William.
William.
Carry.net. So for those of you that don't know, William is really responsible for a good majority of us doing Laravel. William was part of the STPHP group years ago, and he kept saying, I'm into this framework at Laravel. I want to show it to you guys, but I want you to wait until version 4 comes out. I don't want you to touch it until version 4. And he just kept going on about it.
To be fair, version 4 is where his pull requests were, so we were waiting for his pull requests.
So we got a lot to thank William.
Yeah, William does a lot for the community, and he has done incredible work getting us together here as well as other meetups. And absolutely huge thank you to William, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday, my
Thank you
friend.
very much.
All right. Oh, and a little housekeeping real fast. Obviously, we want to thank Carrie for everything they do. If you could just make sure you clean up after yourself. Don't leave trash around. If you need to use the facilities, they're out the door to your right, next door on your right for pretty much everybody in this room.
Yeah.
It's the men's room.
Not the one with all the servers in it, but the one with the stalls.
Yeah. All right. Daryl, you want to go first? Okay, we'll take a couple seconds and get Daryl set up. Do you want a clicker?
Also, we're going to be doing a general.
No,
We're
it's just
doing
a
a general career
Alright.
Laravel framework PHP questions at the end of this meetup. So please, if you have
You can just,
questions
choose if
when
you
we get to
wanna.
the end after the last presentation about anything that the people in this room may be
You need
experts
that.
about, ask questions.
Okay, first I'm going to apologize. I didn't format all my slides properly, so some of the code doesn't look all that great. So hopefully it's still okay to read. I kind of just ran out of time when I was throwing this together. So, but my name's Daryl. I'm CTO of a company called Donation Match. I just rewrote our entire site using Laravel in the last, I spent majority or a good part of last year rewriting a site from a Drupal site to Laravel. I am no means an expert on Laravel or on queues, so please, there's probably half a dozen people here that know it better than I do. If I say something that doesn't sound correct, or yes, John.
Why is the T lowercase?
The T is lowercase because my wife is the CEO, and probably the whole thing should be lowercase. Because when your wife is the CEO of the company, everything's lowercase. Thank you, John. And I use Amazon, I use AWS services, so actually 90% of this talk is actually just on Laravel queues and is applicable to any provider. The SQS part, the AWS SQS part is actually a very small part because it's kind of like it's pretty much a dumb thing. It's just a queue. You put stuff on it, you take stuff off of it. So there are lots of providers Laravel supports for queues. So as I did this presentation, I found out that it was almost all just about queues, not so much about SQS, but at the end, I'll run some examples, just running it through AWS. What are queues? Queues are actually new to me when I started using Laravel, since I again came from Drupal, which Drupal 6 really didn't even support queues. But I'm not going to read that whole thing, but basically Laravel queues allows you to offload processes. So things that your user does not need to wait for, if they submit something and they don't need to wait for a response because you can go spawn off multiple processes, then queues facilitates that because you can just run these processes in the basically in the background and run multiple. So if you have to send out 1,000 emails, queues is a good way to do it. You don't have to sit there and hit the submit button, wait for the computer to go through and try and process 1,000 emails. You just send 1,000 messages out to your queue service, and then your workers or listeners will pick them up and run your 1,000 messages or whatever you need to do. Should have had a drink before I started. My apologies. So I kind of went over this. Why use them? It improves the user experience. Anything you can offload, anything the user does not have to wait for. If the user is doing an action that has to kick off an email, maybe do some create an invoice, create a PDF, anything that they really don't need a response for, push it onto the queue. Let a process run that in the background. They get their response back sooner. Your site feels faster. And also, like I say, you can run parallel processes. You can spawn off multiple queue jobs effectively run them in parallel. So how does it work in Laravel? Well, you just basically can queue a job, you can queue an email, you can queue an event. I don't know, am I missing? Those are kind of like the three that I know about that work directly from Laravel: job, email, and event. That's kind of like Okay. So your code will push something onto the queue, and then you have a listener or a worker process that basically processes it, pops it off, and actually runs your job. The Laravel providers that they support, it supports out of the box, a database, Amazon SQS, Beanstalk, IronMQ, and Redis. I've only used the Amazon SQS. I assume they all work about the same because the queue is not a very complex piece of equipment. It's basically an appliance. And this was my apology for that code. This looks terrible. But if you were to do a job queue, you can use a PHP artisan command. Just do a make job, and you can see on the end there it's queued. That basically builds the job, and it adds it creates your scaffolding for a job queue. Or a queued job, and what I guess does this have a laser pointer on it? Okay, and it adds this should queue and interacts with queue, and this makes the job. If you were to execute a job within Laravel, it would push it onto the queue, and then when it executes, it runs when it pops off, it runs the handle function. But initially, it throws all this data, throws basically this what you call in your constructor, and it pushes that onto the queue along with basically the class, and then when it pops it off, it runs the handle part. So this is the part that would run after the job gets popped off the queue. And then for email queues, it's really simple. If you're using the mail facade, instead of using send, which you would typically do here, you could say mail queue, and then whatever your mail function is. I didn't fill in an example here, but it works the same. Again, it just pushes on the information from this calling function, and when it pops it off, it sends the mail queue. I would recommend that if you're ever sending mail, definitely do it. You don't want the user waiting for mail. This dealing with your mail provider is actually a pretty slow process. And then events, I use this quite a bit. I actually, from my right or wrong, but most of my jobs I run synchronously, and then my job kicks off an event that runs one or more listeners. So I use this. I use events quite a bit. You can make an event by using PHP artisan. You make an event, and you just give it a name, and then you make a listener. And this again generates all the code you need, or generates the scaffolding for the code you need for the event, which again gets pushed onto the queue, and then the listener is the code that gets run when the job gets popped back off. You also have to update your event service provider to say what event your event and your listeners, and you can have multiple listeners on a single event. So, like I said, I do this quite a bit for a lot of email stuff and generating PDFs and junk like that stuff that takes all these things that take a third of a second, half a second to run, again, to get the user, at the end of the day, the user better experience. This is probably one of the biggest things that I think improved my user experience, because all this stuff is great, but if you don't make the user experience better, who cares what framework you're using if your user experience sucks? If you're not offloading as many processes as you can, just makes the user experience, even if you're the user, but definitely if you have a public-facing website, offloading as many processes as you can will just improve your user experience. And so this is you're creating all your event and listener here, and then when you call it, there's just a helper function. You just say, just do a new event, and you might pass in a parameter that might be a model, and Laravel kind of takes care of it. There's so the part that actually does all the work are either Laravel listener or worker. They work a little bit differently. These are processes that are running on your server. And basically you're either running queue listen or queue work. My understanding, the difference is that queue listen will restart the framework with each process, and queue work does not. So it makes queue work faster, but you can run into memory issues, memory leak issues, and things like that.
You know, what parameters do you use to decide which one you're going to use?
That's a good. I don't know. Maybe Todd's going to answer that question. I use queue work. It says, oh, it's faster, and the things that I'm running aren't terribly memory intensive. I'm just sending emails and things like that. You know, at least on the Taylor warned with doing like a lot of image processing or something like that. Something that takes a lot of memory that maybe you would want to use queue listen. But I don't know if somebody else has a comment on that, because that's a probably good point.
Yeah, so I always pretty much use queue listen instead.
I've always used work.
So the reason I always use queue listen is it's a background queue. It doesn't really matter how fast it is. It's meant to offload bulk, so it's doing its job still. And the fact that it forks off the process every single time something comes in, so that it does restore the framework upon each call. The issue with the vocal class or with vocal call is it is just directly looking and it's looping constantly. And most people don't run into memory issues, but anytime you have a memory leak where you're not properly cleaning up after your code, well, you'll possibly do a lot of database queries, and like by default, Laravel will keep track of all the queries you run and store them in the database log. That is memory leak right there. The longer this queue runs, the more database queries you call, the more memory you're going to use over time. So eventually it will cause memory issues. Whereas if you're doing the queue listen, it forks off the process, it runs whatever job it needs to, and then it closes that process. There's no data, no memory leak inside the listen function.
And one of the things that I found is that if you have a long-running process, the timeout, queue listen has a timeout parameter, and queue work doesn't. I have received errors using queue work. Although the process did not fail, it continued to run. I did get an exception reported back to me that it failed, and it turned into a failed job, but it actually did complete. And I think it's related to queue work not being able to time out of a child process properly. And I don't know if you have seen that or heard of that, or anybody else has experienced that. I any questions on that? So just a couple things about queue management. You have a failed jobs table. So if a job fails, it will take it off the queue. It'll put it in a table in the database. Then you can do things like rerun it. So if you get an exception, this is another thing I kind of actually like about queues, is that some of those things that tend to be a little flakier, a little more problematic, do not have the user get an exception, and you just kind of, and the exception ends up in your failed jobs. You can correct it, rerun the job, and have it run successfully. So the user doesn't get whoops error or something weird like that, where you're it's like, oh crap, my SMTP server wasn't available at that second for some reason, or something stupid, or some weird formatting problem, or I always have a problem with Carbon. That is like I have a love-hate relationship with Carbon, I swear to God. But there is a queue failing event. You can add that to your app service provider. I have something there so that I know that a job has failed. So it just gives me an email, which of course would be a problem if it's actually email that's causing it, because I won't know about it. But I have to do something. I don't know. Does anybody have any suggestions on that for when jobs fail and how you get notified? Broadcast a message or how? Huh? I am my DevOps guy. My T can't get any smaller though.
It gets really tricky, but you need to have, in the situation where you're talking about high availability, you need to have independent servers monitoring behaviors.
Yeah.
So, heartbeats.
Yes, and you can have, and you can even have something that's even checking to make sure that the queue, the queue is decrementing or changing, or that it hasn't had 1,000 jobs in it.
Yeah, there's some stuff like Azures, Sloppy.
I think I heard the queue has that feature where they send a queue too long, they'll send off a notification. I don't know about SQS, but
I don't think SQS seems pretty budget.
Yeah, well, SQS is a SaaS, so you can find plugins that will tie to
Okay.
SQS that say, I'll check SQS for you to make sure that it fits your parameters.
The other thing, one of the things I've done is with the failed jobs table, you also have access to an also command called queue failment, which will display all of the failed jobs. I sometimes will set up a cron job, like date link to pipe, whatever that is, out to emails, just so that if there's any jobs that didn't get noticed, didn't get automatically corrected on time, that I can still do it. Because again, when using like queue listen, if you have retry events and stuff set up for your queue jobs, you can temp that again automatically up to a certain number of times until it runs you.
A couple other commands are queue retry if you have a failed job, you can start a job. Queue flush will basically truncate your failed jobs table, which I've done. And queue restart, if I understand correctly, is it basically tells all the queue jobs that they need to refresh, because you might have pushed out new code. Things get cached. That's another thing, is that as these things are running, you'll push out new code and then say, why is it still executing the old code? It's been cached. So that's kind of an important thing right there. And then supervisor. And this is kind of more the DevOps side, but you have these listeners and or workers that are running. Supervisor will make sure they continue to run for the most case. One of the things that I had a problem with, and I don't know if there's a lot of AWS people here, I had a real tough time getting supervisor instructions that were on Laravel plus on the supervisor website. But I found this is actually a Chinese website, but it was still all the instructions were code, so it's all English fortunately.
What OS are you running it on?
The Linux, AWS Linux.
Oh, the AWS Linux?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I just had a real tough time getting it to work. I spent half a day on it, and I couldn't find actually. It was hard for me to find information. Because usually somebody says, "Yeah, here's a blog post, and here are the 10 things," and and his setup was actually looked very straightforward. It was just something I was missing. I'm not Linux pro, so like I said, I spent half a day on it. I found this and then just copied it exactly and it worked fine. So whatever I was missing, I don't know.
Something in the IRC?
That's true. I could have done.
Yeah, this is Supervisor D.
Oh, really? That was a pain in the ass. That was just one of those sucky, you have those sucky days. And then this is kind of like an example of the config that you would put in your supervisor config file. And this is the main thing. This is the command that's being run here. This one is using work instead of listen. I use work. It's I not for any other reason. Is that the example they gave was work, so I use work. Why not? But in my local dev machine, I use listen. Whatever. I don't know.
Well, when work is faster, if you trust PHP.
my deployment my deployment process does full reboots and rebuilds of AMIs and all this other stuff, and I probably do a couple deployments a day. So as long as it works for like a day, I'm usually pretty good. But it's still good to know because eventually my code's going to be stable enough to where it can run for like 3 days without doing a bunch of deployments.
I'm not saying PHP is bad. Once it's good, then that will
Yeah.
versus relying on code and having these. That's a really nice route.
And you're running the process at the time. How many in his supervisor configuration?
This one was, yeah. And I'm probably doing that, yeah.
So, do you really need the speed of work or this problem or not? You can let it die, start back up.
Probably not.
It depends on how busy your site is.
Or what your site does.
Yeah, the only time I do a lot of processes is when I'm sending out bulk emails, or sending a lot. We'll send an email out to like all our customers or something like that. But they're transactional in nature because they're each tailored to they're custom to every user. So, but it's still still south of 10,000. But it's still quite a few, and this generally will peg all my machines when that happens to 80, 99% utilization, which kind of screws up because you have my configuration that if a server is more than 60% busy, it starts spinning up new instances, and it really doesn't help me any. Because it's not spinning up because of user interaction, it's spinning up because of I'm just running too many jobs. So it's something I have to work on to not kill my machines and have a bunch of them spin up, because then my server can't handle it. My database server starts getting busy.
And in that sense, back to the question of trusting someone else's work, is where once you're running a certain percent, then it doesn't spin up your job.
Yeah.
I've sent close to
Yeah, has anybody set up separate servers just to do queues, just to run this part and have it completely separate from your website? You know, because I'm running this on my web servers. I try and save money because I don't have a lot of it. I don't have any, so spinning up extra machines is kind of painful for me.
We even do it cross language. One of the programs is a mobile application to update messages to a queue. Well, it's making one of the jobs actually being ran by my phone.
Okay.
That's 3.
So the setup, this is kind of getting into more SQS specific stuff. You know, you have to require, almost anybody who's using AWS probably already has this required because it springs in everything. You need it for a fly system, you need it for, you know, any of the AWS type tools. You have to possibly update your queue.php file to say driver SQS, and then you update your env. For all the people who use AWS here, don't use your key and secret in your env file. You should be using profiles, or excuse me, not called profiles, they're called policies. You basically add your server to a role, and then that role, then you set up a policy that says this role can do certain things. So you can basically say, I have a role that says it's an EC2 server, and within Amazon you can say, hey, all the EC2 servers can access SQS.
Why?
Well, first of all, you don't have your keys floating around. There's no other place for a key to get typed in. So it's implicit security, and that's what Amazon wants you to do.
It's basically like, I mean, think of it like you wouldn't put your root user who's a brand new user to your database in your application you create individual users that can access that, permissions to access certain function databases.
Yeah,
It's kind of the same concept.
yeah, and this keeps you from typing keys. What it actually is doing is that it uses a metadata database and it issues a temporary key that expires actually relatively quickly, because it's actually a problem when we're using Tinker. I think that's why Tinker doesn't work that well with Amazon services. I think the keys are expiring, so you can issue a command, you just say, oh, let me rerun that, you'll get an error that says you'll get a security error. And I think it's because the keys are expiring. They only last for maybe a few minutes. So each request will go out to a metadata database and try and issue a temporary key, key and secret. So just a really quick demo. I was going to show and this is terrible. Can I make it smaller? Okay. So this is the SQS interface. It's very simple. If you were to you can create a queue. There's just a couple of options. Generally, the defaults will be fine. There is a pretty small maximum queue, small relatively, but
From a cost perspective, are these queues pretty affordable?
they are 50 cents per million messages.
Wow.
Right.
So no, yeah, okay. So that's it. That's the only cost.
That's the only cost.
50 cents per million.
50 cents per million. Your first million are free.
Oh, okay.
But my very lightweight site, I was surprised that I was up to 20 million messages so far this month, which actually surprised me that I do that many messages, because I don't come close to that. And I kind of was like, well, how many emails do I send out? Maybe 100,000 a month. But I'll still up to 20 million. But I think some of this, I'm doing stuff in test, so I'm throwing out messages all the time. that stuff is running parallel and test also. You know,
But it's pretty cheap.
but it's still, yeah. I mean, it's still $10. I actually think it's kind of expensive, but because like I said, if I'm using 20 million, my site's not that big.
Well, and the built-in queue system is file storage. If you don't configure Laravel out of the box, it'll queue to the file system.
Yeah, it'll queue the file system, but if you have multiple servers, you have.
There's just no manual interface.
Yeah. So you can definitely do this for free, and there's a database version too. So if you have multiple servers, you can do database. So it can cost you nothing. I think Amazon gets past this 256 KB message size, which is actually a very big message. In Laravel, you probably wouldn't be, hopefully not doing this. But it can do larger ones, but it puts them out in the S3 somehow, in the S3 bucket. And it'll extend it out to S3, so I think it can go above this 256K somehow.
Can we actually talk about that for 1 second?
Sure.
On your fourth slide.
Okay.
Sorry, but you have construct and handle in your queue object. And
This one, yes.
yeah, and it's important to note that construct happens at execution time for the object, and the object, anything in the constructor is serialized and stored permanently as part of the job. So if the user receives an email after registering, then all of the user information is stored as part of the job in this example. If they then go and change their username before the job is executed, then the job will still be executed with the original username that was stored. So when we look at 256 kilobytes of data in the job, what we're actually looking at is the very short message that says this is a job to be executed, and then everything in the constructor here says, this is what was the state of things at execution time.
But there's an important thing to add to that, is that like the user, it'll say user this ID, and it will store that if you have the serialized models,
Yes.
not the whole object. So when this part runs, it will reinitialize this and go grab the latest one. So the email address you might get updated if something else within the message was pulled in that was not part of the model, that didn't get instantiated here, that will be old.
Yeah, and 5.1 defaulted to not having serialized as models, or doesn't, actually 5.1 doesn't have serialized as models. 5.2 has
You must be talking about 5.0, because I'm using 5.1, and I use this. This is 5.1.
Okay.
So it's 5.0 did not, maybe 5.0 did not happen.
Yeah, so between 5.0, 5.1, and 5.2, jobs have experienced a lot of change about how they exist when instantiated. In 4.2, nothing got stored. It was IDs only. There was no constructor for jobs. So it's something to be aware of, is that if you're testing a job while you're writing it, and you're changing code and then executing something, and it doesn't look like your code actually changed, then something probably got cached as part of the job.
Yeah, and if your job is actually failing, it could stay in your messaging and not go to your, and yes, and everything in there is old.
Yeah. If you fix something in your constructor, then anything that was in the constructor when you created the job is still going to be broken.
So, and what I was going to do, I was just going to go run something real quick. This is my listener running. Actually, I'm going to kill my listener because I don't want the job to run right away. I think over here. I have a job that runs, that does some sync up of some data between some models. Basically, every time when a user saves this information, so if they change their address, whatever. Oh, hold on. Okay. Making sure I'm in the right environment. I'm going to close this one. I think that. Okay. Well, typically this is kind of weird because it has to do with the screen being too small. I have I changed the colors, but it doesn't work on all screen sizes. But I changed the colors of my site depending on what environment I'm in, so I know. But what kind of threw me is that the color's wrong, and it's because when it goes down to a smaller site, I haven't done it like at all breakpoints in my CSS. So, but since I'm always working on a larger screen, it's something I just don't notice. So that does say localhost. So. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when you hit save here, should have a job show up here. Now is this going to oops. Just so you can see what it looks like. So you can tell it basically serializes all the data from the constructor. When the models are serialized, you basically can see like, well, it's an event model, and that's the ID. So you can use this, and I've used it. You go look at this and just try and do your troubleshooting. Like if your job failed or whatever, you can either try using Tinker to run it manually, or check to see, go look at this particular object or record and see if there's anything weird about it, maybe a null value or something like that. And then if I just, and then when I run listen, then it's going to process it. So when I go back to here, refresh, and my job is done. So, like I said, a ton of this is not really SQS specific. I imagine all the different queue managers have similar functionality, probably better functionality than this one. The other things are the Amazon CLI command line interface. This is probably one of the smallest list of commands for any Amazon service that I've used. There's only like 10 commands or so. So it's very light appliance, I would call it. And I guess queues just don't have to be that complicated. I think one of the things that other queues do, and I wish this did, was being able to put a hold, to be able to stop processing on the back end, and also AWS does not have a good delay. If you wanted to delay, send a message tomorrow, you're going to have to do that yourself. I think the most you can do is 15 minutes. So you would have to write your own delay, put it somewhere else, save it, and then run a command, Laravel command, to run it later. I think that was it. Were there any questions? Did I cover it okay? I talked to solved because Tom was going to give a bunch of okay, very few like Laravel tricks. I had one that I use, and it has to do with putting aggregate values into your model, which can come in really handy. That if you have maybe some parent-child models, but you want to know a count from a child, and you can plug it in a model and have it have those aggregate values treated like regular columns or regular attributes. So this is actually a post because somebody posted this question, and this is it seemed like a reasonable response. So I want to give this guy. I've seen a lot of his posts.
You gotta pronounce the name.
I don't know who he is, but I gotta be sure. I gotta be sure he gets credit because I wouldn't know how to do this. I'm gonna try and walk through it the best I understand it. But let's say you want to store this example is storing a rating. You basically have to. You're going to have two functions. One that actually I think calculates the value, and another one that returns the attribute. So when you're doing custom attributes, you see this. This is pretty normal. This is kind of new. So this is basically defining a relationship plus a select raw to say, oh, I'm going to sum up some value, and it gets stored. The get rating basically looks, I guess, with this key exists, it tries to find this key exists, this relation. So it goes and pulls this value in. One of the important things is that you might want to make this hidden so that it's not retrieved every time with the model, because aggregates can be slow. So every time you do your get, you don't want to calculate an aggregate value. You might want to calculate it when you actually need it. So basically, these two functions, like I said, this calculates the value. This actually retrieves the value, and then when you pull it, let me see. When it's hidden, when it's hidden, and you do your get, your rating is going to come back null because it's not going to calculate it. But you can use the width function or the width method to pull that value, and then it'll pull it. So that kind of gets rid of what they call the 1 + n problem. But by using a combination of appends and hidden, it doesn't give you a performance impact if you're not using that aggregate value. You're not pulling an aggregate value or calculating it every time. So anyway, I can make this link. I've used this several times, and it works. So right or wrong, I don't know. It works. It's something I would never have come up with on my own. So I can certainly share this link. Like I said, I just barely touched it, but aggregate values, kind of a pain in the butt, and it's nice. I found it to be pretty easy. Every time I add one, I just do copy and paste of some other one that I have, and change this code here, and you're done. It takes 30 seconds. So, yeah.
We're taking a quick 2-minute bio break. If anybody needs to stretch their legs, grab a beer, grab soda, grab some pizza, we're going to pizza throw that to the lake, and we will move on to our next talk. You worked it. About your beer. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Validation?
validation.
Uh-huh.
I think the one that is sanitation.
Yeah.
So I can do a quick little talk how I'm doing sanitation.
That'd be fantastic. You know,
As a standard,
that's something a lot of people don't think about. That's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
So I can pass it on. It's not
Would you include normalization as part of that, or?
No, sanitation, basically cleansing the input.
Right. I guess that's what I would call like normalizing as well.
Okay.
So,
I
but
think that's
kind of the same thing, yeah. No, but I like.
But basically, my request class, all have one. A sanitized step.
I think that would be a great compliment to his, yeah.
It's a good, because the validating still sanitize it.
So, did you hear that? So Daryl's going to do a complimentary presentation to your validation presentation. So you're going to do your validation, and then Daryl's going to do a quick talk on sanitizing data, sanitizing this data as well. So that would be cool. We'll meet up on that. Very cool. So how many people are here just because they're interested in Laravel and not actually using it yet? Yeah? Look it up, don't laugh, that's cool. We all didn't use it at some point. No, I didn't use it 2 years ago. I was a cake PHP guy. I was hardcore cake. I'm like, there's no, why would I do any other framework? There's no, this guy just was persistent, so. And I thank him for it. I'm a better person because of it.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a fantastic idea. Nice. Your birthday, you're hanging out with us. That's very cool. Yeah, they just mentioned, Tom, we should bring a cake. We've got no Laravel cake. And it could have actually been a facade to a pie underneath. I like how that goes. Yeah. It made it look like a cake, but underneath it was like it was a pie. See, facade. See, you'll get this in about 6 months. Huh? Let's go, man. You're up. You're wandering around.
Not wandering around.
Let's go. No, take your time. Really.
We are short on time, so I'm going to zip through this. That doesn't mean that you can or don't need to ask questions.
We do have a giveaway still, so no fails. Everything's done.
Fair enough. William says he'll be here all night. Like I said, we're short on time, but that doesn't matter because these are stupid Eloquent tricks. You don't need to be paying too much attention to them. But some of them are useful. This is all stuff from the API. This is all stuff that isn't documented in the Laravel or is barely documented in the Laravel documentation, but is covered in the automatically generated API docs that are available. So the first step here is we're going to dirty fill our model. And that title was more offensive, but I did have to change it. So we all know about the basic stuff, create and update, but there's also the fill method. The fill method is just updating the model, not updating the source of the model, not updating the data that the model comes from. So you pass in this case, an array of attributes, and now your model has these attributes stored as its current value. This does not update the database in any way.
So if you do save after this,
If you save after this, it will. Save will always save the current state of the model to the database. This just modifies the state of the model, not the state of the data source.
Would you use that for mock
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a good place to mock data, but then we'll also get into sort of more creative uses for this kind of thing. There's in more complex projects, there's a flow that you might not be in control of. You might hand a model off to somebody whose coding you don't necessarily trust or understand. So before you want to save what they've done, you're going to look at it. Force fill, very similar. This involves the guarded attribute of your model. So when you define your basic model in 5.2, everything is guarded. You can't mass assign. So when you say, I'm going to take this array of changes and apply it to the model, unless those attributes are considered fillable, or unless there's a wildcard in your guarded property of your model, then you can't assign those variables. So this will say, ignore whatever rules the model has applied to it, put these attributes into it. This is a more dangerous way of accessing your model, but there are uses for it that I'll get into at the end of this slide. Is dirty. This is really useful if you're using a model that you lose track of somehow. If you're taking a model and handing it to somebody's library or somebody's process that you don't necessarily trust, and it comes back to you, you can see what they did to it. Right? So this will compare what the current model's state is versus what the state was when you loaded the model from the database in the first place. It'll tell you which columns changed. Very useful in events because events have a flow.
How does it know to take that snapshot?
So what happens when the model gets created and retrieves the data from the database? It updates or it fills data in two spots: the original array and the attributes array.
Oh,
So
okay.
then, when you make changes to the model, it's updating the attributes array. Later on, it can reveal the difference between the original and the attributes. So you save this column after all the after all the events are found, something called finish sync, which will internally update the original array to be the same as the attributes array. And that's
So does this tell you which columns to change?
So this will return the keys to the array that are different between the source and the destination. Does that make sense?
So you can do something like
You can know the
somebody
password
keeps their email
changed.
address. You might want to say, okay, you can use a model.
Right.
So
Now, if you say is dirty and pass it with no attributes, as you can see here, it just defaults to null, then it'll tell you every column that didn't change. But if you have an event, like in your example, where the saving listener is paying attention, you can say, when saving this model, if the password column is dirty, send a notification email to the user saying your password has been changed. If you didn't intend to change it, then contact us. Super handy. And now, is dirty doesn't just apply to the fill and force fill. If you say save or update, save and update, call fill first, and then they call the save method, which calls the saving event. So, is dirty is really helpful if your focus is on making sure things are in a specific status or were changed. A lot of forms that you'll see online have username and password in the same form, but if you leave password blank, then it won't change it. Well, that form can just check for dirtiness of a model when you save it. Get dirty, same thing. Just tells you, it just returns an array of which keys and values are dirty. Very simple. Fresh. Undo the whole thing. You have a dirty model, get a fresh model. Undo changes that were done, put it back to the state that it was in the first place. This is handy with event chaining. If you have an event that is going this, then this, then this, when this is saving, check the user attribute, perform a SOAP request, decode the JSON, update the user, request the user information. If that fails all the way back, this should be your catch statement. Your catch should pull a fresh model. The with property. So this is part of when you define a model, and it kind of doesn't make sense in this part of the slides because relationships are part of the relationship object phase. But if you have a property called $with, then any time you get an instance of your object, it will auto eager load anything in this property. So if you have a user's table and there's a user's meta table and they always belong together, then by defining with user's meta, we'll make sure that no matter what query is executed with the user model, you're always going to get that meta table with it. And unguard. Unguarding your model is dangerous. When you guard a property of your model, you're saying people shouldn't be screwing with this. The ID column is the main one that is guarded. So if I have a user table that has ID, name, email, password, my ID column, which is auto-incremented, is the one that's guarded. No one can touch it. That screws up a lot of things when you're seeding data for unit testing, or when you're seeding data for testing against production data. So if you want to seed a database with data that you're overriding one of your columns that's really essential to never be overridden, but you need to because you're testing something very specific, unguard your model, save your data, and then reguard your model. Now these are all methods and properties that are documented in the API section of the Laravel documentation. And the reason that I'm doing this presentation is because the Laravel documentation has a lot of really good, important, cool stuff, but what it doesn't have is a lot of really helpful stuff that if you kind of knew about, you could do advanced things.
I want to point out the unguard method. There is the opposite portion of it too. It's called reguard. That will put it back into the state of it's guarding against mass assignment. The other thing is this only protects against mass assignment. It's only used when you're working with the fill method or when you're doing use or create. Because create actually internally calls the fill method.
Yeah, fill, create, and update.
If you
I'll default to you because you've written part of this. But
So, what happens when it calls, so the update call goes down through the call handle, which gets a query. The query gets applied, it goes to the get query function, which will check if the model is, it checks this exists properly. If it exists, then it gets the key value and it applies the whale. So it goes whale ID equals, etc. That becomes a default fluent query object, which then you applies with a bunch of it to it, the update method, etc. As of 5.1, I know that we have some development skill. Maybe that's not working. Well, it's because you call it update, not fill. I have not played with 5.2. I'm going to change it though.
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll go on the IRC channel and not the Slack channel and tell everyone what I found.
You've been wrong several times today, Thomas, and we just let you know.
But I've only been intoxicated once. Playing with your model's relationships. That was as dirty as I could get that one. So relationships are really the big strength of Eloquent, but sort of understanding what a relationship does, why it works, and how it works can take some time. And I've learned that reading through the API and realizing how each of these things interact is one of the best ways to understand why a relationship behaves the way it does. But there are some interesting tricks. The first one is with. Eager loading. When you call a model and that model has relationships, you can say with and then the relationships it has. You can also say get relations. So you can find out what relationships a model has. So let's say you wanted to eager load all relationships that a model has. With get relations. That'll eager load every relationship your model has.
Does it go to children? Does it go to relations? Because with
No, it's not. It's
sorry.
yeah, no, it won't go n plus on you.
Okay.
It'll just this will just find the relation. This is a reflective method, so it'll look at all the methods that are named. This will look at all the methods in your model that have calls to relationships and then call them
That makes sense because they can
n plus. You can have circular relationships. Yeah, you wouldn't want that. Relations to array. This will just give you an array of all your relationships. Sometimes this is really the easier way to deal with things. If you just have an object, have one of something, and want to break its relationships up, do a for each over something simple, yeah, here's a for each of its relationships. Build a form based off of the return response of this. Sync. This is one that's in the documentation. It's prominent, but not prominent enough. When you have a relationship, when you have a many-to-many relationship, you can sync a collection of one thing to another thing. You can say, I've got 5 products to a category. So sync will take a collection of products or a collection of IDs to a product. So you can say, these 5 products are in this category. Anything that's not in that array or collection you pass in gets dropped out. Anything that's in it gets added in. This is really, really important for a lot of e-commerce stuff. When you're talking about properties of an object, properties of a thing. If you're selling ribbon, if you're selling wrapping paper, colors of wrapping paper, blue, green, red. When you sync blue, green, and red to wrapping paper item 4, then it only has blue, green, and red. You've dropped out all the other ones that it had before. This is very similar to how checkboxes work in HTML forms. That's why it's important, but we'll get to that next. Create many. Is there a time issue?
Looks like it was added as a late bug fix to version 5.1.
Bug fix. See, because it was in 4.5 or 4.
They might have had one of them.
No, because I know it was in the 4 series. It got added as a bug. It got broken in 5.0. Bug fixed in 5.1. We're both right.
I still give that that you're being wrong.
Technically, he was
That's
born.
right.
I don't need your comments.
It's unguarded, so
Wasn't asking if you needed it. Create many, simple way of just creating a large number at once. As far as I understand, this calls the transaction open and close in MySQL, so you can just dump a large number of objects into a model at once and create hundreds without dealing with the keying problems that will happen from doing it in a for each loop.
what's the key
If you do a for each loop and every iteration of the for each loop writes to MySQL, MySQL will reindex the column, reindex any indexed column every time the query is written. So, like the big slow thing in databases is indexes. You're either a slow read or a slow write. In a slow write environment, which is most web development environments, every time you write a new record, it reindexes the table to help find that record faster. If you open a transaction, then it won't attempt to reindex that table until the transaction is closed again. So you can write 2,000 records in a fraction of the time that it would take to write 2 records, depending on your table optimization. If you're writing a lot of data at once, use create many. Don't do a for each loop that calls create. Does that make sense?
So we should be doing this like if you're doing a conversion, like I was doing, so you should have told me this
I did.
6 years ago.
I didn't.
Not running my conversion. It's okay.
Oh, I mean,
It's a long night.
Yeah.
It's okay.
the trick with Eloquent is that Eloquent's bad because it makes databases easy. You know, databases
Is
aren't.
that one of the laws of thermodynamics?
Yes, databases aren't easy. Databases are awful. And there's these little hidden features that could shave 10 hours off of an import. Create many would shave 10 hours off of an import of 2 million records. It would cut it down from a 10-hour process to a 5-minute process because indexing on tables is the problem.
The more you know.
Get related IDs. Has many, many to many. Sometimes you just want the IDs for the relationships. You don't want the whole object. This will come up as useful in the next slide. But a shortcut for something. And finally, where pivot, not finally, where pivot data, when you have a many-to-many relationship, you have a pivot table. So users settings. Where pivot allows you to use that pivot table to have additional information that you can select upon. So if you have a comments table and a users table, and then you have a users comments table, well, you want a blog entry ID, right? So in your pivot table, in users comments, there's a blog entry ID. So you want to know what comments this user, what comments this user has had on this blog. So that's your where pivot, where blog ID equals 4. Pivot tables are really, really essential in a lot of systems and do not get nearly well enough explained in the documentation. They're also really, really difficult to handle in any ORM, to the point where pivots have their own model type in Laravel now. So I really encourage you, if you're running into something where Eloquent isn't making sense, hit the IRC channel, not the Slack channel, ask about pivots, because we've dealt with pivots in the worst way and the documentation frankly sucks. In the same way, with pivot, we'll take additional columns that are in your pivot table and add them to the model that you're currently querying. So you can say, my user with pivot, and then blog ID 4. And it'll give you everything related to blog ID 4 for that user. And it'll join tables together for you. Is that? Rejecting the dictionary of your average collection lists. Get dictionary. This was a huge debate in the Laravel 5.2 branch, which is that when you get a collection of models, you can treat them as an array. You can say, I want number 4. But number 4 is just the 4th one that was selected. There's no sort order. The sort order of the query is applied to it. You get the 4th row down from what was selected. Which half the time is right, half the time is wrong. If I get a selection of objects and I want the object whose ID is 4, I can't do that without doing a filter on the collection. But if I get the dictionary, then it overwrites the keys. So the keys, when you use a collection as an array, are now the primary key of the model. So in most cases, the ID column. In 99.9% of cases, the ID column. So if I say, get me 10 users, if you get me users 0 through 10, and then I say user 5, without get dictionary, it just gets me the 5th user, no matter what order the users were created in. I'm a programmer, so 5 already means 6. Depends on your perspective.
We did say 0 through 10, which is whatever.
You want to have a user with ID 0.
All right. If I wanted the 1,111th user, then I would get the 4th user. 5th user. Get dictionary just means I want to index my collection by the primary key of the model that I'm querying. This is really helpful. This was a huge debate when they went to 5.2 because people said, yeah, of course I want to reference my models by the ID that I already referenced them by. Everyone else said, well, I've already got code that references them incorrectly, so you can't break backwards compatibility. So that's where we are. Get dictionary does things the right way. Really useful. Average. You have a column. You want to know what the average price of all your products are. Then you just say AVG price, gives you the average price for all the models that meet your collection. Contains. I want to know if my collection's models contain a key with a value of X. So if I have a list of users and a column for gender, 1 and 2, then I want all users whose gender equals 2. So users contains gender 2. This is a non-SQL way of filtering or querying your collections. It's very important to know that it's non-SQL because SQL can really screw things up on certain queries. Sometimes you want to get your data. Now, this also returns a new collection. This will not modify the existing collection. So you can do one query and split it into 2 sets of results really easily. So females equals contains females, males equals contains males on the same collection. Pluck. This is my favorite collection method, and I have a whole slide dedicated to it next. Min and max. Same thing as averaging. Takes your collection, asks for a column, returns the min or max value of that column. If you ever deal with reporting, I'm sorry, but this is helpful. Reject. This is almost the opposite of contains. You can create a callable, closure, although it's not actually a closure. The correct term is X. So, no, we'll call it closure. You can create a closure or a callable, and you can say, if this returns true, drop this item out of the collection. So this allows for really advanced for each filtering, stuff that MySQL does not do filtering well. MySQL does not do searching well. So if you have something that you need to JSON decode, find column 4, evaluate it against another relationship, reject is the way to do it. Not try to make a 10-page query. Don't ever do that. Sum is exactly what it sounds like, except sum has a callable variable. You can write your own closure for sum as opposed to min and max. Min and max just checks for min values and max values. Sum, you can actually execute math on it. You can execute comparisons. We store our values as cents instead of dollars, but we can also compare our cents and dollars to exchange rate tables and then get a sum of the exchange rate value. So sum is in there just because people think sum and they think column name. Sum is not just a column name. Sum can be a closure. And take is in here because it's really simple. It's something that gets overlooked in documentation, but if I want the first 5 users, I don't want to load a table with 100 users and then do a for statement to get the first 5. I want to modify my query to say, just give me 5. Don't load the whole table into the memory. I don't want to look at the whole thing. So take will actually modify your query and say, limit 5. Make sure I only get the first 5 records. Don't write too much to memory. Random. I put this in here because most people don't know that random in MySQL is broken. Does not work correctly. So use the collection method. It's broken in the sense that random in MySQL does not use indexing. So it's as if you were reading every page of the phone book, and then once you got to the end, picking a page instead of just flipping to a page. Because MySQL can't handle randomness. Like that. So little tricks. This is sort of not part of 5.2, but I included because the HTML stuff that was in 4 was really important and good, and I included it in all my work anyways. Form select. So this is our name of our select dropdown options. And what we're going to do is we're going to query the options model for 2 things: the name and the ID. So now we have a dropdown that says item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, and the values of each of those options is 1, 2, 3, 4. This seems like it's backwards. It should be ID name, because when you're writing HTML, you're always writing the ID before you're writing the name. But pluck doesn't require a second argument.
So this is like we get in a list.
Yeah, pluck is just plucking 1 or 2 columns from a model. So what this results in is an array that has a key and a value, or just a value, right? So your array is either going to be associative if it's two elements, it's associative on the key right here. If it's 1 element, then it's numeric on the first argument. So then we also have a relationship here with options, right? So we have our product record, and I want all the options, but I just want the IDs of those options. So what I end up getting is an array of IDs that are current options on that product. Now, sort of moving ahead a little bit, skipping around a little bit, pagination. When I say reports get, I'm going to get a collection, and I can paginate it. The page get variable is automatically built into how Laravel will handle pagination. This is literally all you have to do for pagination. Really simple. But continuing back with this. So, I have a multi-select that has a list of all of my options. When I save this multi-select, what I'm going to do is say product find ID. So now I've got the product that I'm editing, and then options, where the ID is in the options, the array of options that were submitted to my page. Now, product options sync. So we're going back to sync here. No matter what options were already associated with this product, everything in this product gets deassociated. Everything gets removed from the product, and then the ones that are in this query here get added back to it. This is really, really helpful for me. I don't know if it applies to you. I think it might make sense. It doesn't. I don't know. Eric looks really bored. This is unrelated to models and collections. This is just one of my favorite tips. Is routes in Laravel. You can see here I've got 2 routes. I've got a get route and a post route, and they have the same name as admin.product.add, admin.product.add, but they call different methods of the product controller. There's the get form. So this shows the form that has all the inputs, and there's post form. This is where I do my validation and actually submit the data to the model. This is really helpful because when I say form open, then it posts to itself. If I do a get request of a page, it will give me the get add form method. And if I hit submit on form open, if I hit submit there, it'll post it, which means it calls a different method on the same URL. Really, it's a huge time saver. Not having to remember routes, not having routes that say admin product add post, admin product add get. You don't need those. You know, the router knows when get and post are different. They know which one the browser is calling. So you can name them the same thing, but have them perform different events. And this applies also to post, put, delete, store, and get. This is a RESTful function of the Laravel router, and it's really, really useful. That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's.
All right. I know we're running a little long here, so I'll go ahead and do a quick give away the book real fast.
Yeah, and if you want to do the tour thing, I don't
It's
know.
his birthday, man. I wasn't even going to offer.
There's cake in one of the servers.
Watch out. Move.
Sorry. One of his servers is running cake. That's different.
All right. Let's go to pick me.